It was a massacre that shocked the world, Marikana 2012. And 10 years on, some are still asking the question, what have we done to deserve this? Watch.
Sebulalana sotwa senseni ina oh senseni na senseni na senseni na senseni na senseni na senseni na Senzenina, senzenina, usiwana uegetea, auna rufuno, senzenina, yeah, senzenina, 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 ooh, senzenina, senzenina,
Tumi B setting the scene for us with her beautiful rendition of Senzenina, a song we're told that was sung on that copy in Marikana 10 years ago. We have lots to discuss, my brothers and sisters. Let's get to it. A very good evening to you, South Africa, and those watching around the world. My name is Blaine Herman, and this is It's Topical. It's a program where you have your say on the burning issues of the week. And as always, our digital audience is here with us. Good to see them, good to have them on the program. They are sourced based on their interactions with us during the week. And just a reminder to our digital audience, if you have any questions to our guest, or if you want to raise a comment, just raise your virtual hand and I'll do my very best to bring you into the conversation. Now, a decade ago, on the 16th of August, over 30 striking miners at Marikana were killed when police opened fire on them. And they were demanding a pay rise. The copy was where they gathered. The mass killings were preceded by a number of other incidents of violence and death, some attributed to the miners themselves. It was a bloody couple of days. Among the dead, mine workers, police officers, and security guards. Many were injured, which leads us to the question of the week. Have the living conditions of the Marikana miners, mine workers, improved? And also leading to that, when we look at a holistic approach, what lessons can we learn a decade later? Please send us your thoughts at It's Topical SABC. You can also give us a call, 011-714-5958. Walk with me as we get ready for the roundup. We need to understand what the families are going through, what the survivors are going through, what the injured are going through, what are they calling for. right here on this program. We have our producers on the ground in the Northwest to bring you the story from the ground. Now, time for your roundup. All right, let's begin with the other topical stories of the day. The faction of the AmaZulu royal family has announced Prince Simakade Kazweletini as new king at Inyokeni Palace in KwaNongoma. Now, this after they completed the sacred rituals that included the entering of the kraal. Now, while King Misuzulu Kazweletini has been recognized by government as the new monarch, Prince Simakade is challenging this decision. The entering of the kraal is an important spiritual ceremony in preparation of the recognition of a successor. King Misuzulu Kazweletini is set to perform the same ceremony next weekend. Now, it is August, a month when we celebrate women. And last night, we crowned a new Miss South Africa, 23-year-old Ndavi Nokeri, who hails from Zanin in Limpopo province. Also, the South African women's rugby squad made the nation proud when they beat Spain 44-5 at Ellis Park Stadium in Johannesburg. And this got a lot of you talking on social media. Let's take a look at some of the highlights.
Hits up another quick ruck ball. Aziza Haley, who started her all against Malinga. What a try for Ayanda Malinga. Her 8th in international rugby. Aziza Haley take it.
It's been a tough old tussle, opportunity out wide. Calvo and a try for Spain by Marta Comona, but it's a good thing for Maria Calvo, who's probably been the pick of the Spanish team. She was there as the linking forward in the wide channel.
Look, we have to appreciate brilliance on this show. Now, back to our main topic of the day, the Marikana massacre. 10 years down the line, we are going to talk about what has changed since that fateful week in August 2012. And you know that this program gives you a voice as we reflect on the big stories of the week. So tonight's Word on the Street feature comes from the area in Marikana, Rustenburg. Take a look.
10 years later, what do you remember about the death of the Marikana mine workers and how are you feeling now? Actually, it has been difficult for us as Marikana residents. It's something that we cannot ever get to forget about.
Intse re utlwisa bohloko e ka re government e ka tla e re phumile meogo e re nang le yona re a lla ha re thole ha re tshedisei ke ntho e bohloko e ileng ya etsahala ka 2012.
Abanye abantu badutyulwa nangoku abangabanye abakabhataleki abasebenzi ende besulela amalungelo yethu lawo bengafuni ukuba nangoku siye phaa kulaa ndawo ebekuwele amanye ama-comrades.
The policeman came, baba approach right there, and then bastata ubakampela, and then all of a sudden there were shootings. Government ya batho ba borona as blacks ne e dira e re gopoditse long ka nako ya white regime.
The government didn't give back to the community ever since batho ba tlhokafalletswe ke batsadi ko Marikana massacre. So it's very painful re le baagi ba Marikana ditsela di senyegile baagi ba mo Marikana ba tlhoka motlakase ba tlhoka metsi.
10 years later ona ntho e diragalang e sene ke bereka mo non-min platinum no e se le sebaka ile ba re ntshitse mo mmereko nna ke tswile ka 2020 mo mmereko le no a gona mebereko a gona next a lebo.
All right, now on the 16th of August 2022 marks the 10th year anniversary of the Marikana massacre. I want to give you some quick facts and set up the discussions we're about to have. Have a look at this. This is where it all started. From the 9th to the 16th of August 2012, the killings had happened the week prior to that. So it was from that week and it built up to that fateful day on the 16th of August 2012. Have a look at this now. Why did the massacre happen? The Marikana massacre happened as a dispute about living conditions and the salary by the rock drill operators at Lonmin at the time, and they demanded a wage increase to 12,500 Rand per month. Also, when we look at the number of police dispatched on the 16th of August, we understand that 530 police officers were deployed to Marikana. One was injured in the shooting, treated, and then released from hospital. I want to look at the deaths, injuries, arrests on the 16th of August. 34 people, as you know, were killed by police at Marikana. 78 were injured, and we're told about 259 were arrested. So the total, remember, this has been a build-up over a week. The total number of deaths since the strike began was 44, that number. Now, that you have a background, let me give you some context. And please be warned that the following insert contains upsetting visuals, upsetting material. It is a story of pain, trauma, and struggle for healing, and all caused by the events of the Marikana massacre. Retired Lonmin employee Mashudu Makhuvha could have been among those 34 miners who died in a hail of bullets. And believe it or not, this always gets me, he was saved by his golden tooth. Our co-producer, Marikana, has more on his remarkable story. Take a look.
Workers' industrial action, for some, unnerving. But Mashudu Makhuvha's appetite for strikes is insatiable.
Passion ya strike thata ne ke sa batlo misa le letsatsi.
He was among hundreds of Lonmin platinum mine workers who downed tools after the deadlocked wage talks in 2012. But the strike was not without tough guidelines. Makhuvha claims it was believed that the metal objects on their bodies would weaken the ritual muti at the time. But he broke the rules more than once.
August
the 16th, 2012. Makhuvha returned to the copy to join his striking colleagues. But a co-worker's joke landed him in trouble yet again.
For the
first time, the father of 6 hated gold teeth. A strike enthusiast at heart, Makhuvha sent away just 25 minutes before police moved closer. Had Makhuvha succeeded, he could have returned to face death in his eyes. His 34 colleagues and breadwinners murdered in cold blood.
Kabugela bana ba batho ba phatlalla sethunya silla se khwase se tletsi se ka batho.
Trakela ya trata na itsamaya so and a ke re lela hore e kwalle batho ka ba le batho na ba lela hore ba etseng ba fitele ka kanti ba le e ba tsamaya ba siana so le yona. e tsamaya e kata e tsamaya o no re ya ema o reng a ke re yone e lwela gore yo kwalela batho gore ba se ka fita.
Go tloga mo ke ge e le gore ai ka napa ka re amen.
On the face of it, premeditated murder. It just didn't make any sense. It still doesn't. From the rising of the sun to its setting, 10 years on, the Marikana massacre is likely to trouble South Africa's conscience for decades to come. For its Topical I Back, SABC News, Marikana.
Mr. Makhuvha's remarkable story. Let's bring in its Topical co-producer Makhuvha and video journalist Sandile Mtunu. They are live for us at Wonderkop, a place not too far from Marikana in the northwest. Make, good to have you on the program this evening. The families of those who were lost in the massacre and the days that preceded tell us that they simply want to know the truth. It is important for healing. Talk to us, Make, about the psychological trauma that they're still going through.
Blaine, I mean, you rightly put it there in the intro that it's a story of trauma, it's a story of agony, it's a story of pain. I can tell you that when we arrived here at the Wonderkop family units, you meet some of these miners or mine workers who were part of that strike. And the one thing that I try to ask them is, how are you feeling? Ufila kanjani? Because many of them, of course, speak isiXhosa or isiZulu. And they would tell you, the first answer that they would give you is, Eish, mfowethu, kunzima. It sounds like, for them, it's something that happened yesterday. 10 years ago, of course, as we mentioned in that story. But some of them are in this family unit here. I'm just going to open this gate and walk in as my colleague Sandile follows me in this house. As you can see, Mzo is having a phone in his hand. He's watching the show. It's Topical. He's with his colleague here, Malibongwe. I'm just going to take a seat right where you are putting the phone, because certainly this is what we have to hear from you. Mzo, let's start from you. You were part of that strike in 2012. Talk to us. And obviously, the first question that I want to ask you, among others, is, how are you feeling?
Ngifila kabuhlungu kakhulu. Futhi ke ibhlungu inhliziyo yami ngakumbi nxa sekusondele insuku ezifana nezi yange-16. Ngoba ndiyencinga ukuba kanene utsho ukuthi kufikela langa ubomi bami ba kwakuphela langa abubantu zofa ndandizibona ukufa lento ukufa ndandijongene nokufa. So andizazi nibanjani, andizazi ukuthi futhi ingathi ngase ndithini xa sekufika izinsuku, but ke ndiye ninyamezele ngoba kuthiwa indoda iyanyamezela.
You talk about perseverance. A man should know how to persevere a pain. And you are saying that ever since then, it's been difficult for you to even think about it. Just before we went on air, you talk about 9 bullets that were stuck on your body. 2 of them obviously missing you or scratching you. That counts to 9 bullets. Talk to us, how were they removed?
Ndidlule ezintweni ezinzima. Kangangokuba andinothi ndithi mna kuyintando yami, kuyintando kaThixo ukuba ndidlule kwezo zinto zonke zenzeka kum ndibele ndilento ndiyo uba uyakhumbula kakuhle ndingumuntu oye wahlala esibhedlele emveni uba ndilimele kwaze kwathiwa ngabantu hayi nobu-feeling kwayikho le ndihleli into engapha kwe-6 months ndihleli esibhedlele eSunning Hill e-ICU ndicinga ukuba ukuvuka kwam ndivuke ndingakwazi ukuthetha kodwa ndibona uba ndigadiwe ngamapolisa but ndandingahlukunyezwa eSunning Hill but into ebindikhathaza kakhulu ukusuka kwam eSunning Hill ndiya eRustenburg kwisibhedlele kwakuthiwa yiMedicare kulapho ndifumene khona intlungu ndazibuza umbuzo uba noba mna yintoni ithixo inobangela ukuthi ndithathe undisindise ndizophila lempilo ndiyiphilayo ngesizathu ke kwakukho into eyayiforced yokuba mandivume amatyala ukuba ndim umdubuli wamapolisa indim umuntu obephethe isibhamu odubula amapolisa ngelitshwa lomhluzi wamanqina ndabaxelela straight ukuba hayi ngeke ndikwazi ukuyenza loo nto leyo ndivume into endingakhange ndiyenze andinguye umbulali.
Just hold right there. So what you're saying is that you were admitted for about 6 months at Sunning Hill Hospital while you were receiving the medical attention as they were removing the bullets from your body. And of course, you moved to a Rustenburg Medicare, and that's where you were sort of surrounded by police who were, because you were accused of being part of the workers who killed one of the workers?
Okwesibini ukuba yamatyala endandijongene nawo emaninzi njengoba ndisitsho ndisithi elinye leli tyala lokuba kodwa kwakusithiwa mna ndiphethe isibhamu ngelalanga lange-16 ndidubule amapolisa uyayi-understanda ke nawe uba kukho polisi neliyi-1 elaba nomkrwelo okanye elatshonayo nge-16 iphinde elinye ityala endandijongene nalo kukuphembelela istrike esingekho semthethweni ngendlela babeyithetha ngalo icase yokugqibela icase esekhona nangoku icase efana nekuba ugxa wam owayesestrikeni naye njengam endinotsho mna ndimthathe kanjalo kuba sonke sasikwi-NUM ngelaa xesha ikwandim obulele yena futhi uyayibona so umbuzo ke ndandinawo nangoku ndisenawo umbuzo ukuba yintoni nobangela ukuba ndingatshutshiswa ke ngathi kanti mna ndingumbulali intoni nobangela ke iphinde futhi ingachithi icase njengokuba kudala iminyaka le ndiyihleli ndilinde ukuba manditshutshiswe ndicinga uba i-NPA idlala ngexesha lam kakhulu.
Thanks so much indeed. Just to paraphrase there, Blaine, he's saying that he's accused of being responsible for killing one of the police officers during that protest. And he's saying that, I mean, ever since then, nothing has actually taken place in court. The case is still ongoing, but it's not going any further in court. And now his question is, I mean, if they do not have any evidence against him, why do they not throw this case off? And he's also accused of instigating that particular strike. But let's move to his colleague, who was also part of that, and his name is Malibongwe. Malibongwe siyabonga mfowethu. I was jailing nje 10 years later, ever since that Marikana massacre we saw there, ufila kanjani mfowethu?
Hey, ndiziva kabuhlungu kakhulu. Nanjengangoku ndidlela apha nje inhlungu endinazo singapha uqola. Kusukela naba ngumuntu zange ndazifumana inhlungu ezilohlolo. Ngela langa nandithi ndifile. Phofu nasekhaya kwagqityiwe noba ndikho. Ndiswelekile. Kwagcwala abantu ekhaya kwathiwa ndifile. Kwaya kwazofumaneka kamva ukuthi hayi ndisaphila. Ngela langa ndandingenathemba ukuba ndingasina nangendlela endandiphatheke ngayo kuba ndibethwe apha emlenzini nalapha esinqeni. Apha emlenzini ndibethwe kabini, ithambo liphuka phakathi kabini. Ndazobethwa apha esinqeni apho ndenziwe operation ke ngoku apha esinqeni. Yabe yakhutshwa ke ngole bullet yayindibetha apha esinqeni. Kusukela ngoko andikho right. Apho kundivisa ubuhlungu khona ke ngoku kwasekhampanini. Ikhampani nayo hayi andiphethanga kakuhle. Ndinezikhalazo ekudala ndimanje ndizifake. No ndiyehluleka kulo msebenzi nendisebenza wona. Anditholi uncedo. SAUS ke ngoku msazazi lithi igama mandize nomuntu ozandivala. Ndixakwe ke ngoku into yokuba ndizamthatha umuntu ozomvala. Ndithi okay ukhona umuntu ongandivala ekhaya endingeza naye abuye kazondivala. Kuthiwe no asithethi loo nto sithetha ngomuntu osebenzayo. Ndixakwe ngizamthatha phi ngoba uqashile.
Hold it right there. So Blaine, he's saying that, just days after that incident, a lot of people went to his home, gathered there thinking that he had died. And he's also saying that he hasn't been feeling well ever since that incident. He says that his leg and his hip are still painful because he was hit so badly during that day. And he's also saying that he's unable to work. But as a result, he's trying to sort of get his family member to be on his place, to work on his behalf. But the employers are saying that that's not possible. So that's what pains him. And it talks to the living conditions of these mine workers who were part of that strike in 2012. But for now, let's take it back in studio.
It's such important stories to tell, Marke, with regards to what happened back then and how still the remnants of 10 years ago still affecting those who survived. The victims, think about it, right? The victims who died, if they had children who was 10 years old, they're no longer children anymore. How are they coping? Let's bring in the better minds. Follow me while we speak to our digital audience. We're also going to be speaking to AMCU President Joseph Mathunjwa, Sabania Stillwater Tabisile Pumo, Vice President Stakeholder Relationship. They're coming up as well. We also have Philip Vilakazi, part of our digital audience, NUM Deputy President. Let's start with you, Mr. Vilakazi. You heard the stories there of those who have survived, retelling their stories 10 years later. What for you would mean justice for the victims of Marikana?
Herman and Comrade Mathunjwa, Comrade Soli, Comrade Dumpo, Comrade Andrew, Bulelwa, Kenny, and the rest of the audience at home, allow me to continue to pass our condolences message to the families of the victims of Marikana. And having said that, Herman, indeed, justice where there is a life lost will never be justice enough, because there is no amount of money that can bring a human life back. But allow me also to take this opportunity and say, there is a promising working or cordial working relationships of this NUM and AMCU. We have seen that during the gold strike, and we think our unity at this point as the working class is going to ensure that all these issues which affect the likes of the two gentlemen who were interviewed here will intervene in that particular space collectively, because what employers took advantage of is this issue of worker leaders or organizations talking in folk tongues. We can clearly say it from where we are sitting that a lot needs to be done, especially from the Falam Commission to where we are now. That particular commission, the document did not cover majority of these social bread and butter issues of the survival and the victims of the process of 2012.
Let's talk a bit about that. Let's talk a bit more about that and bring in our other guest, Soli Peto from Kansatu, Deputy Secretary. With regards to the recommendations from the Falam Commission, a lot of recommendations, especially with regards to the police. But when you look at 10 years later, criminal consequences. Who has been prosecuted for killing those 34 mine workers on that day? I'm talking about August 16th. None that I know of. Is there will in this country from the political will, as well as the NPA, the police, etc., to bring those to book?
Well, thank you very much, and good evening to the panelists and the viewers there. I think that the recommendations, as Comrade Villagas has indicated, the recommendation from Fallen Commission was not very clear in relation to bring the real perpetrators into the view, or to expose the real perpetrators, including what recommendations should be done by the state or by the mining industry in terms of compensating those victims and widows who have lost their loved one. I think that if we can take that Foreign Commission for a review, it will be able to expose many of the people who played a role to the killing of the Marikana massacre. And I think up to now, where we've seen people who have been prosecuted is the police in the Northwest. You recall that the former deputy commissioner, the provincial commissioner of the Northwest of the police, has been attending the court in the High Court of Mafikeng or Mapato with some few police. But as you were asking, Comrade Villagas, the conditions of Marikana has not been improved. In fact, it's worse. If you talk about the first 10 families who were killed, up to today, they are still struggling. They are still struggling for the compensation or for the payment. What we saw it happen is to them, it's only the issue of putting them into workplace, which they are not happy about that. And from the side of the COSATU, Congress South African Trade Union and National Union of Mine Workers, in 2019, you recall, we convened a rally in Marikana, but we also engaged the Minister of Police and the Deputy Minister of Police for them to be able to take up those issues. Unfortunately, 2020 and 2021 were, all of us were in the COVID, we could not be able to take some of those issues forward. Right. But I think that there is no justice that has been done in terms of those issues.
Let's test what you had to say, sir, and bring in from Sibanye Stillwater, Thabisile Pumo, the Vice President, Stakeholder Relations. Thabisile, thank you very much indeed for joining us. You heard from what Mr. Petro said with regards to working conditions not changing. How would you respond to that? Is things gone worse 10 years later from Sibanye's point of view?
Good evening to you and to your viewers and the panelists. As Sibanye Stillwater, you'll recall that we arrived 7 years after the Marikana tragedy. And at that time, a lot of things had already been on the go that he's referring to. But when it comes to living conditions and wages of employees, we believe a lot has improved to an extent that as I'm speaking to you, a basic salary of a mine worker starts at 14,000, and this I'm mentioning a salary without that's not cost to company. If I add other benefits such as the living out allowance, which enables them to at least secure decent accommodation within the mine or wherever they select to, all of that amounts to at least 24,000 cost to company with various benefits that we pay to employees. So in our view, a lot has changed in ameliorating the conditions of employees. You'll also appreciate that we have fast-tracked when we arrived in 2019, the delivery of social and labor plans to an extent that we have delivered clinics in the areas, school in the area, as well as road infrastructure and other social services in support of the work that the local government there is doing.
All right.
Of course, a lot still needs to be done given the fact that it's been a long time with the structural challenges faced by the local municipality there, and some of the historical challenges that were faced by Lonmin.
I want to talk a bit more with regards to the Marikana renewal program, the key deliverables and the pace at which it is coming to the fore. But I need to take our viewers now back to the Northwest Province, to SABC News reporter Sentleng Lehihi, as well as video journalist Jabu. Jabu is there as well. They are talking to some of the family members, I understand, that have lost. Sentleng, a very good evening to you. Good to have you on the program. What are you hearing on the ground?
Good evening to you, Blaine, and our viewers. Indeed, we're here in Rustenburg. We're in the home of Aisha Fundi. She is the widow of Hassan Fundi, one of the 10 casualties that first lost their lives in the days preceding the 16th of August 2012. You'll understand that on this day, back in 2012, it marked 2 days that Mayor Aisha Fundi had to deal with the harsh reality that her husband Hassan is no more and she'd have to lead her family as a single parent. Mayor Aisha, thank you so much for allowing us to come into your home.
Good evening to you and the listeners, and thank you for having me.
Today is a very significant day. It's 10 years that the reality of your husband being no more is setting in. How has it been? Were there telltale signs on the day of his passing on the 12th of August 2012 for you to maybe pin some pointers together to say, you know, I knew that my husband would be leaving?
There was no signs as such, but as we are practicing Muslim, on that week, on that night, we were fasting. It was Ramadan time, and he normally wake me up during Ramadan when we were fasting for Tahajjud prayers. And that particular night never wake me up. So that was a strange thing. And in that presiding week, he also dreamed his brother passing on the road. And he asked me that, you know, I dreamed my brother, and he said I must come fetch his spirit on the road, not knowing that he's the one who's going to die on the road. Those are just the strange things that I remember.
Now, we've been watching the show progressing on television as we're waiting for our turn. And you heard some of the speakers say the most unfortunate thing is not only that you haven't received compensation as families of the deceased, especially the first 10, but then it seems that no one is taking any accountability or responsibility, particularly for the passing of your husband, as he was an employee of Lonmin Mine, but as a security guard.
Yeah, of course, yes. I was listening to one of the striking miners that is complaining about how they were treated by the police and wara. And that it kills me, because none of those strikers are taking accountability of killing my husband. Every time when I hear them talking, they blaming the police, as if Marikana started with the police going to the mountain and killing people. I bear with them, and that was not supposed to be done. But they also took action in killing the loved ones. I understand that South Africa has human rights. If you have a right to strike, why do you also have a right to kill people? Because my husband was killed by the strikers. Even the commission, the results of the Falas Commission, it stays very, very clear that my husband died in the hands of the strikers. And my husband was not just shot in a bullet. He was butchered. He was killed. His body part were taken for Muti rituals. Those are the things, because I have never even heard. I want to be at peace, and I want to forgive people. I just wish to see one of the mine workers one day coming to me apologizing to say, Mama, we killed your husband. I heard of Mr. X, who was talking on the commission to say he apologized. This was the only one, and Mr. X did not do that alone. So he did that with Arab people. I'm willing to forgive, and because I did not have a closure when my husband died, and then I need them to tell me. Then I can have a closure, maybe forgive them and move on with my life. Because honestly speaking, Marikana did not just happen. Marikana started somewhere. It has a circle, but what do they call it? A circle. It started somewhere and it ended somewhere.
Certainly, Mefundi. The words of Mayor Aisha Fundi there calling for responsibility and accountability for those who did this gruesome act to come up and say, we did it, we're sorry, we apologize. From us here in Rustenburg, back to you, Blaine.
All right, St. Lang, thank you very much indeed. I'm going to put some of those concerns to our digital audience as well. We have Sipho Mantula, and you heard what Aisha raised with regards to the rights of people to strike. What are the parameters? He's a human rights activist. We're going to get his take. We also have Joseph Mathunjwa from AMCU as well. More next. All right, welcome back, my brothers and sisters. How do we get to a better place? When we use Marikana, the Marikana massacre 10 years ago, as a focal point to analyze where we are as a country. Let's bring in, I guess, a digital audience still here. Joseph Mathunjwa is from AMCU President. So good to have you on the program. We were chatting to Ms. Pumo from Sibanye-Stillwater, Vice President of Stakeholder Relations, and she was saying that things have changed for the better. Those living conditions have changed, she says. Back then, they were fighting for 12,500. That salary has gone up now. What's your feeling on the ground? Do you share her views? If you can unmute her, Mr. Mathunjwa. There you go.
Good evening to you and good evening to your viewers. We shouldn't, the Sibanye-Stillwater must not claim easy victory. I mean, there is nothing that has changed in the lives of people of Marikana. Government and Sibanye-Stillwater hasn't done anything to improve their lives. As opposed to the fact that AMCO, through the collective bargaining, through the 5-month strike, we were able to push Lonmin to where the workers are today. If it wasn't AMCO, those workers would have still maybe earning 7,000 rand per month. So therefore, Sibanye-Stillwater hasn't done anything in the lives of those people at Marikana, the community and the workers. So if Sibanye was really truthful to itself, we wouldn't be having more than 20,000 workers who are still staying in the squalors around Marikana. We wouldn't having a community who's still staying in the informal settlement where there is no proper storage, where there is no proper light, proper roads, and etc. So as much as they still having these huge bonuses for their Prime Minister, Neil Froneman, of 300 million per annum, you'll never see any improvement in those lives. Sibanye-Stillwater was worse than Lonmin itself.
Let's bring in Ms. Pumo. How do you respond to that when, if that is the case, a CEO is earning over 300 million per annum, and when you look at the salary of the workers at the coalface, how do you expect workers as well as the public to comprehend that massive gap?
Look, I think the issue of the CEO pay was really ventilated extensively. I would want to represent us back to the fact that since we arrived in 2019, and Mr. Mathunjwa is correct, we found that the salaries were already over 12,500. However, with the wage negotiations we had when we arrived there, we were able to increase the salaries in accordance with the numbers that I've shared earlier. And again, when we talk to service delivery issues, you do appreciate that service delivery is the ambit of government. However, through our contribution since 2019 to some of the community programs, as I said, clinics, schools that we build in the areas, and some of the roads, you can begin to see that we are making a dent to a very long history of underdevelopment in the area, and you would know the challenges faced by that municipality. So we are not saying we've arrived. We are saying the journey has started, and we are hopeful that together with other mining companies that are in the area and local government, we will be able to ameliorate the living conditions, not only of our employees, but of their families and their relatives in areas in and around our operations.
Let's take it back to our digital audience and bring in Andrew Chirwa, NUMSA president, with regards to this gap, Andrew, between workers and management. Does it contribute to the animus that we normally see between workers and management?
Thank you very much, Bain, and good evening to your viewers and the fellow panelists. Indeed, it's a sad day, it's a sad occasion. This will always be a reminder of a painful history in the history of workers in this country, in the whole history of South Africa, where workers were massacred senselessly on something that, in our view, we think should have been avoided, especially during a government that we say it's a government of the people, a democratic government. We think that we must be clear that the police have no role to play in labor dispute. Labor dispute must be resolved between the parties, because it is the parties that definitely knows what is at stake, what are the issues, and how those issues are tackled. So you're right there. I mean, the issue of inequality, Mathunjwa is right, AMCU President. That's part of the big challenges that workers in this country are told they need to understand the economy is not doing well, the inflation and all the challenges, the companies that are not doing well. But if you look at the gap between the workers and the executive, I mean, really, one of the stats that we've seen in the past is that it will take an ordinary worker more than 100 years to receive what one of the top 10 CEO in this country earn. I mean, it's really appalling. It's appalling. If you look at the executive or packages of the CEOs in this country, the executive, it's appalling. And that is why the industrial relation being in this country will always produce results of this nature. We ought to address that. We ought to move an apartheid industrial relation where black people are at the bottom of the food chain and the bosses are the only one eating alone.
Let's get Sipo's take as well as Kenny. You up next. Sipo Mantula, your take?
Blaine, thank you and good evening. Blaine, I think if you look at the massacre, we have to look at it in the context that both the ANC and the trade unions during that time and the state have failed the victims and even survivors. And we can want to look at the Farlam Commission report, but if we failed even on the mere TRC report recommendations, what about the role of the mining companies who are now what we can call as a second in command of the state? Apology has to be done in three forms. You need the one from the state that comes from the head of state, which is the current leader now, Cyril Ramaphosa. You need apology that will come from the police, the people who were behind this massacre. And you need apology amongst the workers, but healing and cleansing, the memorialization of the site, and the corruption that is in that province for many years in the mining sector. So if you look at even the young people who were killed, I think one thing that we are missing again is that you had young people who were killed in that massacre. And secondly, you had African nationals. And it was on the eve of the SADC summit that President Zuma had to come back from the SADC summit. But President Zuma never went to the survivors and the victims. Instead, he went to the police. So if one has to look at how does the government and how does the ruling party alliance members think about the mining violence, that shows you, Blaine, that we still have the issues even around how police are still using violence as a weapon against their own.
Before I go to Kenya, I just want to pick up something, what you said, Mr. Mantula, with regards to this apology that many are calling for the current president, Cyril Ramaphosa, to go to Marikana, to the widows, and apologize. We know what the Farlam Commission had said, basically saying that Cyril Ramaphosa had no reason to believe that the SAPS would launch this poorly commanded in what they say operation, causing the deaths of these 34 mine workers. But what do you think an apology will mean to the community there, face to face? Mr. Mantula, that was directed at you,
Blaine, I think apology means a lot. You're healing and cleansing, and even if we know that even during the apartheid system of the TRC that went in, others never gave an honest apology. But what you need again is the issue that I said earlier of healing and cleansing, and the issue that we need to understand that the role of the head of state, again, he is a unifier, he is a nation builder. So even if you look at the role of the same president that he went to the funeral of Winnie Mandela and promised that he would go to the side, that will show you that apology means a lot, Blaine, but again is to acknowledge even the use of force, the role of the police, why even during that day, the police brought the mortuary vans. And I think that was said by Advocate Dumisa Waha Nzebeza, saying that why there was the mortuary vans that were on site, but it means that it was a premeditated assassination of black people and of the young people who were mine workers, who have been enslaved
Mr. Blake.
and by even loanmen. And let's understand even the role of the mining companies. Like I said, it's a foreign European company. Loanmen has played a critical role.
All right. We are fast running out of time, so let's keep our comments short. Digital audience, Kenny, jump in. Kenny, over to you. Kenny, can you hear us? All right, we'll come back to Kenny in a short while. I'm not sure if he can hear us. Bulelwa, you have your hand up. Talk to us.
Yes, I'm very struck by what I've heard from the survivors of the massacre. The fact that this is a scar in our memory as South Africans that we cannot afford to forget. Again, deep condolences to those that lost their lives and deep sympathy to those that are still carrying the guilt as well as the inability to reach closure, because there has been delayed justice in this case. And our democracy can never be a robust democracy if injustices such as these are left unresolved. And moving forward, I have to say, as a human rights activist, the fact that this issue hasn't reached closure is in itself a violation of human rights. Yes, there might have been some improvements in the lives of miners, but everybody in South Africa knows that the life of a miner in South Africa right now is not as improved as it was before Marikana.
Answers get closure. Answers to the widows get closure. Kenny, I know you're eager. Jump in.
Mr. Blade, I'd like to thank you for this opportunity. First of all, this is truly hurting. You know, so many mine workers have lost their lives, and until this day, there are many families that do not have breadwinners because of the Marikana massacre. The government has not done anything to improve the livelihood of these Marikana miners. Most of them are still injured to this day. They cannot work. They are unable to provide and fend for their families. For mine owners, for them it's still business as usual. They're still continuing with their lives. Meanwhile, the lives have stopped for those miners who are working for them. Government needs to intervene. This is not the first time that this has happened. 10 years later, they've forgotten about them, but our people still continue to suffer. The government must choose who they want to side with. Thank you very much, please.
Thank you, Kenny. Mpo, your take? If you can unmute Mpo. There we go. It seems that we're having some issues with them, Paul. Solly, let's just bring you in very briefly. We're running out of time. You had your hand up.
I wanted to respond. Thank you very much. I wanted to respond on two issues. One is about the role of the trade union. I think the role of the trade union must be remembered that I think Comrade Mathunjwa and Vilakazi can attest to that. There was a team that was appointed first by the trade union role there, for the team that was led by Kgalema Motlanthe to deal with the conditions and the challenges that the mining industry is playing. Secondly, is that you will recall, all of us, that President Cyril Ramaphosa at that time did apologize publicly. And what we've been doing as the trade unions at the level of the alliance, we had been trying to get the current president of the Republic of South Africa to go straight to the people in Marikana. In 2019, when COSATU and NUM convened that right, we wanted to take President Cyril Ramaphosa there, and we were told that the situation is not good for him. The people at Marikana does not need to. I think they don't want him to come there. You can confirm with Comrade Fundi. Comrade Fundi has been at the forefront talking, representing the widows, particularly those tents where even the May Day this year, we had a plan to take President Cyril Ramaphosa directly to go and speak to the mine workers and the community of Marikana.
Well, we shall watch that space if that indeed happens. We've asked you to send us your thoughts with regards to has conditions improved, as well as what lessons can we learn. This is what you had to say.
Finally, agreement was reached, and I'm happy for everyone. And I just want to appeal to my beloved president just to apologize, because no one is perfect. And case closed. Philip Make from Mabopane.
For me, it's actually quite sad that the Marikana massacre actually ever happened. It's sad that our people lost their lives in the manner they did in Marikana 10 years ago. The fact that 10 years down the line, we still have unanswered questions is actually quite sad and unconscionable. I would be in a happy space if Marikana widows and all those who lost their loved ones, the people who lost life and people who lost limb, I would be quite happy if those people were to be compensated.
From my side, is no. It was just better, but it was never improved to the standard they were promised by the government.
All right, that is your say. Unfortunately, we have run out of time. We want to thank our digital audience as well as our guests. Value added indeed in order to better understand where we are 10 years ago, where we are now, and where we're going to. Let me give you my take. A massacre in a time of democracy forces us to remember that we can't become what we oppose. The process of healing continues for the families of the deceased. You heard it. 44 dead in total. What gives comfort after tragedy? Answers, accountability, compensation. Did my loved one die in vain, or have lessons been learned so that we can get to that better place as a family, as a country? We need to fully understand what renewal and what healing means to the affected families. A community that is living a shared agony. No doubt the past is whatever the records and the memories agree upon. That's George Orwell. But my only hope is that this awful past leads to a better, brighter future for the families of those who perished during that fateful week on August 10 years ago. Until next week, my brothers and sisters, take care. Bye-bye.